November 18, 1968. 3:42 p.m. A private training hall in West Los Angeles, tucked behind a nondescript storefront where the smell of old canvas, liniment oil, and dust hung permanently in the air. The room was quiet in the way places become quiet before something irreversible happens. No crowd noise, no cameras, just the low hum of traffic outside and the faint creak of wood under shifting weight. A man stood at the center of the floor, thick through the shoulders, dense in the legs, his posture relaxed but heavy, like an object designed to absorb force rather than react to it. He was known, in certain circles, for one specific reputation. He did not feel pain. Broken noses, cracked ribs, torn skin, none of it changed his expression. He had built a career and an identity on endurance, on taking damage and continuing forward. Opposite him stood Bruce Lee. He was 28 years old, under 70 kilograms. Dressed simply, dark training pants, a plain shirt damp with sweat. His stance was unremarkable to anyone looking for spectacle. No tension in his shoulders, no clenched jaw. His breathing was steady, almost quiet enough to disappear into the room. The contrast was immediate and unsettling. One man represented mass, resilience, and the visible proof of toughness. The other looked like someone who might be moved aside if space were needed. The idea that they were in the same room for the same reason already felt wrong. The challenge had not been issued loudly. There was no shouting, no formal declaration. It emerged the way many dangerous ideas do, casually, almost politely. The larger man had been watching Bruce teach earlier that afternoon. Short movements, minimal strikes, demonstrations that ended before observers could fully process what they had seen. At one point, the man smiled, not mockingly, confidently. He spoke about pain. He explained, calmly, that pain was the real currency of fighting. That techniques worked because the body reacted to discomfort. That fear came from the anticipation of harm. And that without pain, there was nothing to stop a man from continuing forward. He mentioned, in passing, that he had trained himself beyond that response. Bruce listened without interrupting. His face revealed nothing. No agreement, no challenge. Just attention. When the man finished, there was a pause long enough for the room to settle again. Then Bruce asked a single question. "What happens," he said quietly, "when pain is not the target?" The man shrugged. He said there was nothing else. That was when the situation crossed an invisible line. Because what followed was not supposed to exist inside the rules both men understood. The man offered himself as proof. He said Bruce could strike him. Hard. Anywhere. He would not react. He had done this before, with heavier fighters, with men who specialized in causing damage. He stood still, feet planted, arms loose at his sides. Several people in the room shifted uncomfortably. The idea felt unnecessary, excessive, almost childish. Bruce did not refuse, but he did not accept the terms either. He stepped closer, slowly, closing the distance without urgency. His eyes did not lock onto the man's face. They moved instead along the body, the neck, the chest, the way weight settled into the heels. "You don't need to endure," Bruce said. "You just need to stand." That sentence landed oddly. It did not match the gravity of the moment. The man nodded. He stood. Time stretched. The room grew quieter, as if sound itself was retreating. Bruce raised his hand, not into a fist, but with two fingers extended, relaxed, almost casual. There was no visible preparation, no winding of the shoulder, no tightening of muscle that would signal effort. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then something did. It was not a strike in the way most people understand striking. There was no snap, no crack, no sharp noise to announce impact. Just a small, precise movement, two fingers touching a point just below the collarbone, near the hollow where breath begins. The contact lasted less than a heartbeat. The larger man did not cry out. He did not flinch. There was no sign of pain crossing his face. But his body changed. First, his breathing stopped. Not consciously, not as a reaction, but as if the signal had simply failed to arrive. His chest froze mid-rise. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in confusion. His knees softened. The weight that had seemed so immovable seconds earlier shifted inward, folding toward itself. The man reached out instinctively, as if searching for something solid to hold him upright. There was nothing. He collapsed to the floor, not violently, but heavily, like a structure whose internal supports had been quietly removed. The sound of his body hitting the mat was the loudest noise anyone remembered from that afternoon. Silence followed, deep, uncomfortable silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The man lay on his side, breathing shallowly now, his face pale, eyes darting as though he were trying to understand where control had gone. There was no visible injury, no mark on the skin, no evidence that anything extraordinary had occurred. And yet, something clearly had. Bruce stepped back. He did not look triumphant. He did not look concerned. He looked neutral, as though the result had been expected, even inevitable. After several seconds, the man managed to sit up. His voice, when he spoke, was strained, not from pain, but from disbelief. "I didn't feel anything," he said. Bruce nodded. "That's correct." The man swallowed. He tried to stand. His legs responded, but reluctantly, as if unsure of their instructions. "What did you do?" he asked. Bruce took a moment before answering. He glanced around the room, at the people watching, all of whom were suddenly aware that they had witnessed something they would struggle to explain. "I didn't attack your pain," Bruce said. "I interrupted your order." That phrase lingered. He explained, slowly, not as a lecture, but as an observation. "Pain," he said, "is loud. It announces itself. The body prepares for it. Endurance trains the body to tolerate that noise. But function, balance, breath, coordination, those things operate quietly. They do not demand attention until they are gone." The man listened, his earlier confidence replaced by a focused stillness. This was not humiliation. It was curiosity sharpened by shock. Bruce spoke about tension, about how people mistake visible effort for effectiveness, how tightening against force often creates the very leverage that defeats you. "When you rely on pain," Bruce said, "you fight what is obvious. When you remove function, there is nothing to fight." Weeks passed. The incident was not discussed publicly. There were no demonstrations repeated for an audience. No articles written. Those who had been present spoke about it only in fragments, often stopping mid-sentence, as if realizing words were inadequate. The man returned to training, but his approach changed. He began paying attention to breath, not as endurance, but as structure, to posture, to the invisible mechanics beneath movement. He was no longer interested in how much he could take. He wanted to know how little he needed. Bruce continued on his path, as he always had, not collecting victories, not seeking validation, just refining an idea that most people were not ready to accept. That strength is not measured by resistance. That pain is not the ultimate currency. That control does not announce itself. Years later, when Bruce Lee's name became inseparable from speed, precision, and philosophy, stories like this once surfaced quietly, often dismissed as exaggeration. Too subtle, too inconvenient for a world that prefers visible proof. After all, how do you record an absence? How do you document a moment where nothing seems to happen and everything changes? The truth, if it can be called that, sits uncomfortably between fact and refusal. It asks something of the listener. It demands a reconsideration of what power actually looks like. And perhaps that is why the story remains unsettled. Because if it is possible to stop a man who feels no pain without causing pain at all, then the limits we accept are not physical. They are agreed upon. An agreement, once questioned, is fragile. If this story unsettled you, if it made you question what you think you know about strength, control, or fighting, then you're already part of the conversation. Subscribe to Bruce Lee, Beyond the Fight, because true power begins before the fight.